Fitness Doctor, medicine for your body, mind and soul, mindfulness-based yoga, coaching and therapy.
Saying that they couldn't hear you. Oh.
Hello everyone and welcome to the next instalment of the Speaker Marathon, and I'm really happy to invite Dr. Robin Charlton to have a chat. And I've known Robin for a couple of years now, and it's been really interesting watching your journey and where you come. I just love what you're doing at the moment, working with carers in compassion and mindfulness. You're a yoga teacher, but I just love what you're doing at the moment. So I'm really excited to have that conversation, because I know there are going to be a lot of people that will really resonate with what you're going to say. So I'm really excited. So welcome. And
thank you, Sarah.
Just start by telling everybody who you are and what you do.
So I am Robin. I am a psychiatrist of mental health. So it means I've been studying mental health and working in mental health for, I think I was talking to someone the other day, probably like almost 30 years. So studying the brain, I actually studied neuropsychology before I did medicine. So always been interested in how the brain works and how it functions, and neuroplasticity and rewiring. So at the moment I have a business called the MindFitness Doctor, but I also have gone into business with another psychiatrist, and we formed something called Compassion Coaching. So the businesses are in its infancy, as you know. So the MindFitness Doctor, I do MindFitness Yin Yoga. So that's an incorporation of Yin Yoga and the principles, but also a whole lot of mindfulness-based therapies that I studied through my job as a psychiatrist. So kind of incorporates, if people have heard, acceptance and commitment therapy, positive neuroplasticity, mindfulness-based CBT. So it's kind of interweaving a lot of that resource building into the Yin Yoga. And also just about trying to develop something called the MindFitness Gym, which is something that I want to develop, that people can come and cultivate these inner resources and this resilience building through belonging to a club like a gym. So calling myself the MindFitness Doctor, because it's, you know, practicing mind fitness is just as important as practicing physical fitness. So it's about that's what the MindFitness Gym membership is, that we're doing along those lines. So I'm still developing that. And then compassion coaching, I have just completed a 6-month mindful, so 6-month mindful self-compassion meditation teacher training through the Centre for Mindful Self-Compassion, which is a big centre, and I don't know if you can hear my kids screaming in the background. Centre for Mindful Self-Compassion in America, and it's all based on evidence-based, research-based strategies to give you micro self-care practices that you can use in the moment, on the go, in your busy day. And so we're looking at rolling out courses for everybody, but particularly for those in caregiver roles. So
and I'll get you to talk about that in a minute. I have to say, I love the fact that you're involved in mindfulness and compassion and yoga, and you still got kids screaming in the background. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I practice it regularly well, I have to remind myself to practice it regularly myself.
I think it's brilliant. Tell me, I have to just say something. I've been to your yoga classes, and as someone who cannot sit still and whose mind is always on the go, I've done yin yoga classes in the past, and I've always really struggled, because to sit in a pose or lie in a pose and be in a pose for 3 or 4 minutes used to kill me. It was so boring, and I'd be thinking, oh my god, when would this be over? I want to just do the next thing, because I like floats. But your yin yoga classes are just on another level, and I think it's because you're incorporating mindfulness and the techniques that you've talked about, you're in a pose and you're doing, you know, you're on another, it's just on another level, and then you finish and then you say, right, now move into another pose, and I'm thinking, oh no, I'm really comfortable, you carry on talking, and I didn't want to come out of the pose, and that's never happened before. And I was so completely focused on what you were saying, my mind wasn't wandering, and I wasn't thinking about what I need to do after the class, or, you know, like you do. Your classes are amazing. And so just if anyone's ever tried yin yoga and thought, oh no, it's not for me, go and try Robin's yin yoga classes, because they're just, I've never experienced anything like this. So relaxing. So yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. That was the aim behind why I was so passionate about it, because it was kind of mindfulness and movement. So even the principles of yin yoga I use to explain principles of stress and why we get stressed, and how you can apply what you're feeling in your body and what you're doing on the mat, how you can apply that off the mat. So it's giving people like all of these insights and offerings into how our autonomic stress nervous system works and how we can regulate that, and what mindfulness is, but how you can actually, the aim is how you can feel it in your body, because sometimes mindfulness classes are all kind of, you know, you're sitting and you're still meditating and your mind's really busy. But I found, and we'll talk about my story in a moment, that I found that I needed to come into my body to really incorporate some of the practices of mindfulness. So that was why I loved yin yoga, because it was weaving the story of and using your body to explore what the principles are and feeling it in your body, and it's always optional, so it's a very safe class. There's no rules in it, you know, even in each posture, because everybody's body is got different skeletal structures. I give different variations to get into the same target area. So it's not about looking perfect in a pose. Like one of my yoga teachers said, it's not, you're never going to, how much amount of kale or awareness or, you know, insight, you're not going to ever be able to change the way that your skeletal structure is. And it's about kind of accepting, it's helped me accept my body actually, because I've become aware of that actually we're really feeling into our body, and it doesn't matter, like we can all be in 3 different poses to feel the same target area that we're stretching, and we're all gonna, even if we're in the same poses, we're all gonna look different. So it's a lot of different. Sorry,
I said yoga isn't about really being in that perfect pose of the perfect body. That wasn't ever its intention anyway. So it was just, it was a vehicle to that mindfulness and that embodiment and that kind of that other level. But it's always become about the physical.
Yeah, the Westernization of yoga. I think they included Swedish calisthenics with it when it came to the West, and so that's when it became. And they said that because it was one yoga teacher teaching too many, that they had all these rules and regulations about how things should be, because it was that particular yoga teacher's body that he was teaching to other people. Doesn't mean that so there's all
originally it was one-on-one, wasn't it? It was kind of like a guru and a student, and it was really about the get into that place of enlightenment, get into that place of meditation. It was a way of controlling the body so that you could be still.
That vehicle. Totally.
So tell everyone about your story. How did you, being a medical doctor and a psychiatrist, how did you then come across yin yoga, and then how have you now found, you know, that self-compassion and mindfulness, and how, you know, that journey is fascinating to me. How did you come about that?
So even as a medical student, I always was really, really interested in who cares for the carers. So, you know, as medical students, and you're expected to like have a lot of these experiences, and there's no kind of way of talking about it. And it got to that point where I had a boyfriend who was a first year house surgeon. He was top of his medical class. He was really sporty, really good looking. From the outside, you wouldn't know how much he was struggling with that role and that responsibility of being a doctor. And he unfortunately took his life when he was a first year house surgeon and I was a medical student. And I guess in that capacity at that time, I had that feeling of I need to care for myself before I can care for others. And so I was the first medical student at Otago Medical School to have a gap year. So I went to them and I said, there's no way that I can ever continue unless I don't, deal with my grief and continue on. It wasn't even talked about. It was like this huge taboo subject. No one really wanted to talk about all of that. So I needed to go and figure it out. My father at the time, who was a doctor himself, he said, you're only going to get over this if you keep on caring for others. And I'm like, no, Dad, I actually need to care for myself and fill up my own cup first. So looking back, I was quite courageous and compassionate to myself at that stage. And actually now in medical school, it's a normal thing for people to do. So
you're a trailblazer.
Yeah, so if there's one thing that I'm quite proud of myself for, it was for listening to myself at that stage. People said I'd never go back to studying medicine, but they don't know me. So
you proved them wrong.
Yeah, I did. I went back after having a year
off. In that year, what did you learn about yourself, or what was it that made you think, yep, now I'm ready to go back? What were you doing?
I actually went traveling. I went back to my roots in South Africa. I went and visited my family. I went and explored who I was. Because we'd left South Africa when I was 11 and I was like 24 and we'd never been back. And we have family in Norway. So I went visiting all these families and I found out about my family history, and I just grounded myself and rooted myself in who I was as a person. Actually, in that year, I found my father asked me to look for his real dad in that year. And we in Norway, and we found him, but he had died only a month earlier. But I found his half sister, who now does yin yoga with me every week online.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it was a really important year to do that. Yeah.
So did you kind of feel like you really knew who you were? You really had a strong sense of identity at the end of that year before you went into to go back to medical training?
Yeah, as much as you can.
Yeah.
But and I gathered that strength and that determination to go back. And then completed that, and I think probably got into psychiatry because of that experience with my boyfriend. Maybe the wrong kind of motivations about wanting for other people not to have that experience that I had, maybe wanting to try and rescue people when actually sometimes, now that I'm more of a wise psychiatrist, it's like you can only do as much as you can do in the moment. But then because I also was interested in caregiving, I think that's what led me to becoming a perinatal psychiatrist, which means looking after mums when they're pregnant and up until their babies are a year old. And actually, even in that role, beginning to realize that the focus was on the mothers, but it was like the whole families involved in that, the siblings, the fathers. When a mum has postnatal depression, it's not just about her, it's about the infant as well. Really loved that job. A lot. Was able to study mindfulness-based therapies through that job. When I started to have my own children, I had a big break. I had about 4 years off, which is not something that you do in medical school. Yeah, and that's when I came to yoga, because my second child, Fergus, never slept or was always unhappy during the day. We were trying to find out why. The sleep therapist was saying there's something medical wrong, and the doctors were saying I was too much of a mother that wasn't a hard enough mother, although I was doing the sleep training, letting him
Dr. Spock.
letting him cry for hours and hours and hours, and it was just exhausting. It was so exhausting, having also a child that was only, like, they were quite close together, my first and my second child. And so I needed to try, and then my husband got made redundant, and there was so much stress in the family, and I couldn't even get out for a walk by myself. So I think the first breakthrough was claiming and telling my husband I needed to go for a walk in the morning. I didn't really care. He did, because he went to work really early in the morning and home late at night. And it was like claiming that fact that I needed that space to myself. And then there was a local yoga teacher that was doing her training, and she needed people to come and do her classes, and she was a friend of mine, and I went and started doing my first yoga classes at night. So that's 14 years ago now. And I found that I just coming into my body was like, because being a doctor, you're so much in your head, academics all the time, and it felt like I was coming home into my body. It was an amazing experience, and I was actually hooked ever since that time, and I have always prioritized doing at least one yoga class a week for myself, because I know it grounds me and it takes me out of all of that busyness in my mind, and that my body thanks me for it at the end of the day. And so then I was doing the yoga, I was studying the mindfulness-based therapies, because I knew from yoga how effective mindfulness was, and mindfulness-based therapies. Lots of mums don't want medication. In fact, I spent most of my psychiatric career taking people off medication.
Wow.
And or really getting them on the minimal medication that they need to support them. Some people do need
when you were offering the mindfulness techniques to people, was that considered quite radical, like to your peers?
Yes, and that's part of the reason that I'm probably not working within the medical profession now. It wasn't not acceptable, but it was not practiced. It was different. About as your role as a psychiatrist is to do an assessment, sorry about that, manage risk, and then pass people on to somebody else within the team to do the therapy. And I found that really frustrating, because I would do an assessment, build this relationship up with somebody, and then you just overseeing. I just felt that was traumatizing to everyone I was seeing too. They trusted me, they told me these amazing amounts of trauma sometimes, and then you're like almost abandoning them and passing them on to somebody else in the team to do the therapy, because they're not as expensive as you are to employ by the DHB. So there are some psychiatrists that manage to do therapy within, but not that many. It's the model is that's what you do. Your medication, your risk, you hold the risk of the whole, everybody else's work within the team, and then you hand it on to someone else to do the therapy. And I guess I was a frustrated therapist, because I did psychology before I did medicine. So,
and you're a people person. You actually want to build up that therapeutic relationship.
And I knew that this is where I want to. Yeah. And I know from what I've studied that mindfulness-based therapies or practices can be just as effective in mild to moderate depression and anxiety as medication. But there are a lot of GPs, that is their only option at the moment, because there isn't any other options. And so, yeah, that's why I come to that, and how I come to mindful self-compassion. So out of all the mindfulness-based practices that I've studied, mindful self-compassion has been the most transformative for me. So about 3 years ago, I was starting to get that caregiver fatigue, and we might talk about what the neuroscience is behind that, because we were talking about that earlier. And we had family stuff happening in our family, which meant that I was in multiple caregiver roles. Like we had family members in ICUs and family members that had cancer diagnoses, and I found myself being in multiple caregiver roles and getting that caregiver fatigue and traveling 2 hours to my job.
Yeah.
And I did this 8-week course at that time, and I realized that I was running out of battery and I needed to recharge. And so I made a decision to have a break from traveling 2 hours to a job, traveling 2 hours back. I felt that I was going down to Auckland and caring for other families, and then my family was starting to suffer. So it was a real dichotomy. So so I made that compassionate decision to stop, reevaluate my life. My husband told me to stop painting, and his analogy is that I was painting the same things over and over again. I needed to find another canvas and start painting another color.
That's cool.
Start doing something else. Yeah.
So did you do that self-compassion course for your role? So you were learning a tool to use with clients, or were you doing it because you were looking for that yourself?
There was a lot of people in my life that were starting to realize I was burning out, including my husband. And I had a friend who got actually quite fiercely compassionate with me and told me that quite similar to you, Sarah. Actually, I can imagine that if you'd known me
pain
at
in
that
the
time,
bum.
you would have said that. Yeah.
Stroppy, opinionated pain in the bum.
And I actually ended up going along to the course with her. And so I think on some internal level, I knew that this is what I needed. I might have been telling myself in my head that I'm doing this for other people, but really the real reason, when you ask, is it was for me. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, and so that's led to I guess doing my yin yoga training, and at the same time too, I found yin yoga, and I found it online actually. No, I actually went to Northern Arena and did someone called Daphne's classes, and I had that same experience I had in that first class about, oh my gosh, my body loves this, and I feel really grounded and centered and relaxed and restored after this class. There's something in it. And so then I started to look for more yin yoga classes online and practice, almost like it was an essential way of taking me out of that sympathetic overdrive that I was in and bringing me down into the parasympathetic nervous system. So it was like my body was like telling me that I needed it like every couple of days to practice it, and I kept on practicing it and practicing it and practicing it along with the mindful self-compassion. And I think that's what started to bring me down from total burnout and fatigue.
Do you want to, I know you just said that you would touch on the science behind it, but I'd really love you to talk a little bit about the kind of the philosophy behind the self-compassion, because we were talking about the difference between empathy and compassion, and there's going to be people in this group, some of whom are practitioners in whatever field, some of whom will be parents. They'll be looking for, looking after their sick parents, looking after kids, looking after partners. So it doesn't actually matter whether you're a practitioner or not, but I know a lot of practitioners go into health because they're giving, caring, empathetic people, and that's why they burn out. It's why, there are nurses at the moment who are burning out, because they just give, and they never have enough for themselves. So could you just talk a little bit about, because I know when I was at college, like I said before, we were taught to be empathetic, which is easy when you're an empathetic person. But you're saying there's a difference between empathy and compassion, and empathy actually can lead to burnout. Do you want to just talk to that? Because I think that's really fascinating.
It's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. And I wish that I had been taught this as a medical student as well. I hate to say it, but my parents said to me when I got into medicine, you're going to burn out because you're just so caring. And I was like, no, I'm compassionate, and medicine needs more compassionate people. And I didn't really understand that difference between empathy and compassion then.
Yeah.
So I hate to say that they were a little bit right. Never tell them that.
Never tell parents that they're right, never.
No. So it's called the pain of connection. So we have in our brains these little brain cells called mirror neurons, and so we mirror what other people are feeling. And so, for example, if you are feeling a little bit anxious or stressed, then my mirror neurons pick up on that, and then I feel that empathetic distress in my body. And what tends to happen is that people then you start to feel my stress, and then it kind of spirals.
Yeah.
And we see that, like I saw that a lot if we were dealing with a psychiatric crisis and people were starting to feel a little bit like that. There's like a wave that went out, that process, that parallel processing. And so it's just the way our brains are wired. I think I told you the story of when Abby was born, and she has a really sensitive scalp, and she had a ventouse, so she had a big cap put on her head to bring her out, and she cried for days, my first child. And I felt really distressed. I don't know, I was like, what the hell? I didn't know parenting was like this. Husband said he had to go home and feed the dogs when I knew that someone else was feeding the dogs, because he just had to get out of the And so finally, after 3 days, we got an osteopath to come in. And I was just talking to you about, he didn't actually do anything. He was just very calm. So the fact that he came into the room and he was calm, I felt his calmness. I calmed down, and Abby calmed down to the extent, he just held her, that she fell asleep for the first time in 3 days. And so that was a really powerful kind of illustration to me about that. And so people talk about self-care as being selfish, but it isn't. And so it's realizing in the moment, feeling a little bit stressed here. Some of that stress might be mine, but some of it might be what I'm picking up from other people's mirror neurons, especially when you're listening to people's in the health profession. There's a lot of trauma, and so you're listening to those traumatic stories. So through your empathetic distress, you feel that in your body.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that we used to call this transference and countertransference. So Freud knew about all of this stuff. And laboratoric transference, so that's when people put all this stuff into you, and then you felt like you feel like shit after you've come out of the room.
Definitely know what you're talking about.
So it's about kind of that experiential ownership. It's like everybody's on their life journey, and I do want to help where I can, but the best thing I can do to help in this moment at this time is to realize that my sympathetic nervous system is being activated by hearing that. So what can I do in this moment to bring on board my calming nervous system? So is it feeling my feet on the floor and taking 3 deep breaths and just exhaling? I was talking to a nurse this morning that is doing the vaccinations, and apparently there's quite a lot of stress around that. And what she does is she sanitizes her hands between each patient and lets go of the stuff, let go. Or, just bring yourself into the moment between each client that you're seeing with whatever strategy, your senses bring you into the moment. So really listening to what you hear, or mindfully eating your food, Sarah, you talk about a lot about that. Smells, any of that stuff. So there's a lot of micro self-care strategies that I have started to teach people that they can use in the moment to just calm themselves. And self-compassion is the most effective tool at calming ourselves, bringing on board that calming nervous system. So starting to talk to ourselves in a more compassionate, kind way, rather than listening to that inner critic that's always putting us down. So that inner critic can put us into that flight or fight nervous system just like that. So that compassionate voice calms and soothes us. There's a reason why we speak to others in this way, because we're wanting to calm and soothe them, and then we beat ourselves up all the time. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So even touch has been shown, like touch on the face can bring on board our calming nervous system. There's a reason people put their hands on their hearts, because that's where your vagal nervous system is. So and all of those things.
So empathy, we can't, for most of us, cannot help the empathy that we feel. It's like an innate part of who we are, and it's almost primeval. I guess that goes back from when we were in caves and we were wanting to connect and be part of a tribe. So but so really you're talking about being really mindful of how we feel in the moment when we're with someone, and the compassion is really about kind of realizing what's going on and then finding a way to take ourselves out of that situation and not feel like it's our job to fix people. It's our job to be with them in the moment, but not get drawn into it as well, because then we become fuel for the fire, don't we?
Totally, you've got it. And then when we calm ourselves down, that's why self-compassion is not indulgent, is that the person that we're caring for, their mirror neurons pick up on our calmness. So we're not fixing anything, we're not doing anything. We're being in this calm, connected presence, space of calm. They pick up on that, and then that helps them regulate their emotions.
So by putting ourselves first, we're actually helping others. Inadvertently, we don't even know we're doing it, but that's the best thing you can do, is help yourself first, and then it will automatically work that it helps other people.
So the self-compassion is not indulgent. Actually, we so need it to spread those seeds of calmness and compassion around the world. It starts with ourselves, putting on our own oxygen mask first, in the moment, on the go, every day.
So we're actually doing a disservice to others if we don't do that. It's not even about not being selfish or not being selfish. It's actually just daft if we don't, because we can't possibly help other people. We're actually going to do the opposite.
Without realizing it, and then getting caught into our reactive patternings that we. It's just the way that it's not our fault, but we can actually do something to change it and rewire our brains in that way. So it's super exciting. Really
cool. So tell people what are you doing at the moment? What services, what courses, what are you doing at the moment in that field?
So at the moment, through my MindFitness Doctor Facebook page, I have Micro Mind Fitness Monday. So I talk about a strategy that you can use in your week every day. And then I have Wellness Wednesday workshops where we talk about all of this kind of stuff. So it's through the MindFitness Doctor or my group, How to Cultivate Calm for You and Your Family. I'm going through that. I teach it in my MindFitness Yin Yoga classes, but the compassion coaching is where we're talking about how we can teach this to people in caregiving roles, and we're doing a 8-week mindful self-compassion course starting in August. It's going to be in person, but if there is any demand for online, we will also do online at Golden Yogi in Takapuna, which is a really beautiful yoga studio. So it's on Mondays, and it is a 3-hour course, so it is quite a bit of a commitment, but it was so transformational for myself. So the 8-week includes 1 week where there's just like a 4-hour retreat, which is just really blissful and restorative. That is so that myself and Angus, who's a psychologist, I've set up. So between us, we've had like 40, 50 years of experience in mental health. What we want to do is to start teaching shorter courses to particularly health professionals. But this longer course is for anybody can do it. So we will have courses that are available for anybody, and then we will kind of niche down on people in caregiving roles and maybe the health professionals.
And so the course, the 8-week course, when you say it's open to everyone, is there a certain type of person that it's geared towards?
No, it's for anybody. It's for anybody. So we all need to self-care, don't we? We all need to learn these practices no matter where we are, because we are all in relationship with somebody somewhere. And so so we can but it does talk about, we do talk about caregiver fatigue and burnout and all of those kind of things in the course as well. So we talk about what mindful self-compassion is, how to access your compassionate voice. We talk about values and that, how do you guide yourself towards your life with your values. Talk about how to live more deeply. So there's a lot of stuff about gratitude in there as well. So
awesome.
It's
That's
huge
cool.
and it's you do meditations and practices during the course, but you take away with you from those meditations and practices little things that you can do in the moment.
Right. And is yoga part of that too, or is yoga completely separate?
So that's a course that's been like studied over and over and over again. So it's a protocolized course. But my aim is to incorporate the two going forward and to maybe do like 1 or 2 day retreats for people where you can feel those concepts in the yoga and then also have it kind of as a formal course as well. I mean, I teach all these concepts in my normal weekly yin yoga class, and to the point that when I've been trying to recruit people for the course, they said, "Well, we don't need it because you teach it."
You teach it anyway.
I'm like, "Oh no." They're right. Bloody hell.
Do you know what I love? Just I'm assuming you can talk about it, but you're actually working with midwives, so you're just about to start working with midwives at Auckland.
Yeah.
Because that to me is really exciting, because that's the start of working with practitioners and helping them, which is going to have a knock-on effect. Are you able to just talk a little bit about what you're doing with them?
So that'll be a 6-week course for 1 hour, and we're hoping to go in lunchtimes with them. So I met somebody in the DHB who at a compassion and healthcare conference, and so she really gets why it's important. So we're hoping that flies.
That could be the start of something really, really big, and then you can start working with doctors and nurses and naturopaths and nutritionists and all sorts of different practitioners. I think that's brilliant, and it's really I'm really impressed that the DHBs are interested in that. I can see there's a change coming.
Oh yeah, well, that's what we're hoping. That's what we're really, 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 really hoping, because I think I'll finish this talk with an illustration of the gestures of self-compassion, because compassion, it's not just about that tender connected presence about yourself. It's also about fierce self-compassion, and fierce self-compassion is all about standing up for what is not right, and by yin and the yang of compassion. So the yin and the yang symbol, you need both. And so to be self-compassionate to ourselves in that yin fashion allows us to access that fierce self-compassion, to say, no, this workload is actually, just because we have a culture of having a high workload, we're not going to accept that, and we're not going to accept these working conditions. And if you want compassionate, connected health practitioners to stay in this field, then this is what we so it's, I think mindfulness in healthcare gets quite a lot of slack, because they're saying that the health management are just throwing it at people like a band-aid, and they're not really looking at the systemic issues around why people are getting burnout in healthcare. But what I feel will happen is that because people are starting to care for themselves and affect other people around them with that they can start to practice that fierce self-compassion and saying no and setting boundaries and starting to work on, hopefully, that's my wish, the bad working conditions a lot of healthcare practitioners are under, actually, which is not right.
No, it's not. And burning out doesn't help anybody.
No.
They're more us. And it's the importance with the fierce self-compassion. It comes back to that. If you take time out for yourself, if you love yourself and you care for yourself, you're much more likely to have boundaries and say no, rather than putting yourself last all the time. Cool.
So shall we finish? Do you want to join me?
Tell me your three top tips for what you would say. Do the top, and then tell people where to find it. So what are your three top tips?
The first top tip comes from when I had Fergus and things were like over. I was so overwhelmed with all of that. Why is this baby not sleeping? What's wrong with him? He ended up having an immune system disorder. So that's so the first top tip. And the first top tip I told lots of people, and when I was a perinatal psychiatrist, was give yourself permission to self-care, and whatever that might be. For me, it was to have a walk in the morning with a dog by myself with no children, nothing. To be nourished in nature. So a lot of the time, mothers or people in caregiving, it's all about giving out, and they feel like guilty about giving themselves even the permission to take the first step to self-care. So that's my first step. Give yourself permission to self-care and find what that is. And so self-care is basically can take you off the job. So for me, I did need to get off the job, have the walk, go to my yoga, have things that go for a massage. But sometimes that doesn't give you the strategies you need in the moment. So my second tip is to use these, to learn these micro self-care strategies that you can do in the moment, on the go, when you're in a relationship, when you're in an argument with your husband, when you're confronted by something at work, when people are gossiping when they don't need to gossip, when your children are going off at you and you feel like the worst mother in the world. Learn how to self-care in those situations, so in real life situations. And then my third tip is to be kind to yourself. We all muck up, we all make mistakes, we're not perfect. Just always remember to come back to yourself in the moment. You don't necessarily need to put your hand on your heart, but just take a breath and say to yourself, what do I need right now? Maybe it's just to say to myself, you've got this. You're okay, Mum. You're not perfect, but you're okay. You're doing the best you can with what you've got in this moment. So,
Thank you. Tell people how they can contact you. How can they find you? Where can they find you?
So I'm working on my MindFitness Doctor website, so that's not up and live, but the Compassion Coaching website is. So that's compassioncoaching.co.nz, and you can book that 8-week Mindful Self-Compassion course through that.
Okay.
Otherwise, on Facebook, you can find me under MindFitness Doctor, and I do have 2 groups: How to Cultivate Calm for You and Your Family, and the other group, which is trying to niche down more on caregivers, is Caring for the Carers Wellbeing group.
Cool. And if people wanted to book, say, yoga classes, where would they go?
So that's going to be my I have a booking system, but people are finding that quite complicated. So in the next little while, I'm trying to get that all through my MindFitness Doctor website.
Cool.
But if you're wanting to do it before that, I do it online every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. and I can just send you the Zoom link if you message me.
Cool.
First class free. Otherwise, just at the Mahirangi West Hall Tuesdays and Fridays at 9:30. Well, 9 on Tuesdays and 9:30 on Fridays.
Cool. I'll put that all in the link so that everybody knows what you do and where to contact you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So shall we finish with the 3 gestures of what self-compassion is?
Go on then.
Have we got time?
Yeah, we've got time. We got time.
Okay. So just bringing your attention to your hands and grasping your hands really, really tight like a fist. So basically this is about what struggle and suffering is. So we have things, shit happens in our life, but this is our reaction to that stuff, is what is in our clenched fist. So it's our resistance to it. I don't want this to be as it is. Yeah. Or our striving, like I want more, I want to do more, I have to be more to be acceptable.
Oh, yes.
So that causes that suffering as well. And then if you take your fist and you beat yourself up with your internal critic.
Do frequently.
Yeah. We're really good at that.
We're really good at that.
Yeah. So the first part of mindful self-compassion is mindfulness. So it's becoming aware of that inner critic. It's becoming aware of our resistance to things as they are and our striving. Mm-hmm. And so what mindfulness does is, so if you just let go, to let it be, that's mindfulness. So you're just feeling that softening in our bodies, that letting go. Doesn't mean that what's happening isn't happening, but all of that struggle is just dropped around that. So that's the first part of mindful self-compassion. The second part, if you want to open your arms, like a big hug, like we're hugging everybody in the world, I'm hugging you, we're all hugging virtually on the screen.
Yeah,
it's that sense of common humanity, like suffering is a part of life and we are not alone. Everyone knows what it feels like to feel anxious, giving a talk or, knowing how to parent teenage children who are going to their first party with alcohol.
Oh, yeah, been there, done that.
So it's that sense of common humanity. We are not alone. So the first part is, ouch, this hurts, the mindfulness. And then the second part is, but we're not alone. Other people feel this pain. And then the third part is the self-kindness. So it's bringing our hands into our heart. So this is the yang compassion. So it's that soothing touch, that loving connected presence. And if you really feel into that, you can actually feel the calming of your nervous system by doing that. And it's also when we access that compassionate voice saying, may I live my life with ease, may I feel peace. You can do this, I believe in you, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
When we access that, yeah. So that's the yang compassion. And then the yang fierce compassion, we're doing this in Yin Yoga class this morning, is accessing that fierce warrior mama bear inside of yourself that women are not socialized to feel.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be the good girl.
I love it. Yep. You can't say no.
Yeah.
So it's like accessing that in your body. So like access it in your body, and then it's this. No. And Kristen Neff talks about how it's also about saying no to our inner critic. No, that's not an acceptable way to talk to myself. That's enough. That's enough. Stop it. But
cool.
Also saying no about, it's not saying no to other people and who they are, it's saying no to their behaviors.
Yes.
That is not a good behavior. I don't like the way you are behaving. Not I don't like the way you are. Like our children, I love you still, but I don't like you when you do this.
Yeah.
So it's creating those boundaries, that fierce compassion, that courage, accessing that courage within ourselves, that grit and that courage to say no. So that's the fierce, and that another part of that fierce self-compassion is being your own inner coach. So motivation. So people feel that if they're going to lose their inner critic, they're going to lose that motivation to keep on going. So like you do a diet and you don't, you had your cake and you beat why you're so stupid for having that cake. You knew that wasn't going to work. But if you're more self-compassionate about that and you say, oh, other people are like this, other people have that cake, it's okay, I can start again tomorrow. You're more likely to persevere with your goals and to succeed. So Winston Churchill said, success is going from failure to failure without lack of enthusiasm, and that's basically self-compassion.
Yes.
Yeah, and all of the Me Too movements, the Black Lives Matter, it's a self-compassionate movement. It's saying, hang on, no more.
Yeah, there's a better way to be.
Yeah, and that's so by being self-compassionate first too.
So those gestures, are they something that someone could practice thinking about, those different elements? The gestures are really important because they're kind of embodying the concepts, the thoughts.
Yeah.
Oh, love it. Thank you.
It's a good way of, like, when you in your day and you ask yourself, what do I need right now? You can take yourself through those 3 steps. This hurts. It's okay to feel this way. Other people feel this way. What do I need? Do I need that yang? Connected presence, calming, or do I actually need to access that fierce mama bear inside me?
Yeah.
And say no more.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate your time. I'm sure lots of people, you're going to have, your words will resonate with a lot of people and it will get them thinking, and hopefully they'll come and connect with you and find out how they can work with you more, because it's a much needed tool, particularly at the moment, I think, in the world. So thank you so much for what you're doing. I love what you're doing and how you've the kind of the path that you're on now. I love it, and I love the fact that you're passionate about it and that your passion comes through really strongly. I kind of feel like you've really found your calling, and I'm just so excited about what's coming next. Fantastic. So thank you so much for giving up your time and talking to us. And if anyone has any questions, please put comments or questions in the comments box underneath the video, and I know Robbie will connect with you and answer questions and talk to you about whatever you want to know.
Certainly, and certainly if that first part of my story brought up anything for anybody, please kind of reach out and ask for help if that first part of that story was not so nice for you as well. Sometimes I think about not telling that part of the story, but it was such a big part of why I have become where I am. But I acknowledge,
and it means that
other
people will connect to you because of it, because a lot of people will have similar stories, and again it shows us that we're not alone, that a lot of us have been on really similar paths, and we think that it's our path to walk on our own, but actually we're all kind of walking next to each other. Yeah. Cool. I so appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you for having me on here, Sarah, and thank you for being supportive of me in this journey. Really value that.
It's a joy and a pleasure.